The first time I realized I had completely humiliated myself was when the wrong twin smirked at me. And the second time was when he didn't let me forget it. Orientation week at Westwood University was supposed to be a fresh start. A chance to shed the weight of high school labels and awkward years, to build myself up into someone new, someone fearless. But instead, I was standing in the middle of the quad, my words from 5 minutes ago replaying like a bad sitcom laugh track in my head. Wow, your eyes are seriously gorgeous. Are you trying to kill me with that smile? To my horror, the boy I had said it to wasn't the gentle, quiet guy who had been helping me find the registration tablet. Was his twin. The one with the leather jacket, the smirk, and the reputation that already preceded him like a storm cloud. Kill you with my smile? His voice had a teasing lilt, wrapping around me like smoke. Damn, orientation's already more fun than I thought. And just like that, I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. I hadn't expected twins. That was the problem. The first one I met, Ethan, had this calm presence, almost soothing. He was thoughtful, polite, guiding me with patience when I looked completely lost among the color-coded maps and screaming student groups. His twin, Adrien, was a completely different story, sharper edges, confident posture, a cocky grin that hinted at chaos. Unfortunately, it was Adrien who now had me trapped in his gaze, his smirk tugging at the corner of his lips like he had already figured out how to dismantle me, piece by piece. "You're new here, huh?" he asked, strolling closer, his leather jacket catching the late summer sunlight. I swallowed, nodding too quickly. "Yeah, transfer. Just trying to figure things out." Adrien's smile widened. "Well, you've already figured out one thing. You've got good taste." My brain short-circuited. I wasn't supposed to fall for lines like that, especially not from someone who looked like trouble wrapped in human form. But his voice, low and amused, sparked something in my chest I couldn't ignore. The campus was alive with noise cheerleaders hyping up the crowd, club representatives shoving flyers at passing students, music thundering from portable speakers, but somehow it all blurred out. The only thing I could hear was Adrien's laughter, the kind that slipped under my skin and made me want to defend myself, even if it meant digging myself deeper. I started, heat crawling up my neck. "That wasn't, you weren't flirting?" He tilted his head, feigning innocence. "Then what was it, exactly? You just compliment strangers like that every day." I groaned, dragging a hand through my hair. "I thought you were never mind." "Oh no!" he cut in, eyes sparkling. "Don't stop there. You thought I was who?" I should have walked away, pretended I had somewhere urgent to be. But my feet stayed rooted, my chest thundering with something equal parts dread and anticipation. "I thought you were your brother," I admitted, barely above a whisper. Adrien's grin was immediate and merciless. "Ethan, of course." He stepped closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "Funny thing is, people usually confuse him for me. Guess you've got a unique eye." It felt like he was dissecting me with his stare, stripping away the thin armor I had carried with me into this new life. And I hated how much a part of me liked it. Later, when I finally escaped to the dorm lobby, I pressed my forehead against the cool vending machine glass and exhaled like I'd run a marathon. My roommate hadn't arrived yet, which meant the space was mercifully empty. "Rough first day." The voice was gentler this time, pulling me from my thoughts. I turned and found Ethan, the twin I thought I'd flirted with, standing there with a soft smile, his backpack slung casually over one shoulder. He didn't tease. He didn't smirk. He just looked at me like I wasn't a walking disaster. And maybe that's why the ache in my chest deepened. Because somewhere between Ethan's kindness and Adrien's merciless teasing, I already knew I was in trouble. But the thing about trouble is, it has a way of finding you again. The next morning, while I tried desperately to blend into the cafeteria chaos, Adrien slid into the seat across from me without asking. His tray clattered down, loaded with enough food for 3 people. "Morning, Romeo," he greeted, biting into an apple like we'd known each other for years. I choked on my orange juice. "Wouldn't call me that." "Why not? You practically recited poetry to me yesterday." He leaned back, eyes sparkling with wicked amusement. "You're making college a lot more interesting than I expected." I wanted to argue, to tell him that he had the wrong idea, that my accidental slip wasn't an invitation for him to worm his way into my life. But every time I opened my mouth, he had this uncanny ability to twist my words back on me, leaving me flustered and, worst of all, smiling. And maybe that was the scariest part, because I wasn't supposed to like him. Not the twin who laughed at me, not the twin who reminded me, with every glance, that I'd made a fool of myself. And yet, against all logic, my heart was already spiraling. That was only the beginning. Adrien wasn't just a passing presence. I saw him everywhere. In lectures, leaning casually against the back wall like the rules didn't apply to him. At the library, pretending to study but really watching me squirm as I avoided his gaze. On the lawn, tossing a football with friends, his laugh cutting through the air in a way I couldn't ignore. It was as if the universe had conspired to place him at every corner of my new life. A constant reminder of that humiliating mistake and the unsettling truth that maybe it wasn't such a mistake after all. Because no matter how hard I tried to push him away, Adrien had already found the cracks in my defenses. And with every smirk, every teasing word, every stolen glance, he was prying them open wider. And I had no idea how long I could hold out before I completely fell. Adrien wasn't supposed to be the kind of guy who lingered in my life. He should have been a moment of embarrassment, something I laughed about later when I called home, a footnote in my first week of college. But instead, he was everywhere, like the taste of coffee you can't wash out, bitter and addictive all at once. The worst part? He seemed to enjoy it. By the end of the second week, I had a running tally in my head of all the ways Adrien had ambushed me. Sliding into my seat during breakfast like we'd been best friends for years, tossing me a soda in the middle of the quad, watching with delight as I dropped it and got sprayed, whispering, "Miss me?" in the hallway when I was surrounded by classmates, somehow showing up at the exact bench where I was trying to eat lunch in peace. And the list only grew longer. I tried to tell myself he was just doing it to pass the time, that maybe he got some twisted joy from messing with the quiet transfer student. But there were moments, tiny cracks in his playful mask that left me reeling. Like when his teasing softened into something else, something I couldn't name. Like when his gaze lingered a second too long, his smile faltering as though he wasn't sure whether to step closer or pull away. It was infuriating. It was confusing. It was intoxicating. "Why me?" I finally asked one afternoon, unable to take it anymore. We were on the grassy slope outside the library, the September sun painting everything in golden warmth. Adrien had dropped down beside me like it was his rightful spot, stretching out with that lazy confidence that drove me insane. "What do you mean, why you?" he asked, resting on his elbows. I gestured vaguely at the buzzing campus, the swirl of people around us. "You could mess with literally anyone else. There are thousands of students here. Why keep bothering me?" Adrien tilted his head, his dark hair catching the sunlight, his grin maddeningly slow. "Because you're fun." "Fun?" I repeated, disbelieving. "Yeah." He sat up, leaning in just enough to make my pulse stutter. "Most people fall into predictable little boxes. They want to impress me or avoid me or use me for something. But you blurt out compliments you don't mean to say. You glare at me when I'm trying to be charming. You blush like you've got something to hide. You make this place interesting." The honesty in his tone rattled me more than any of his teasing ever had. I swallowed, unable to meet his eyes, my chest twisting in ways I didn't want to admit. "You're ridiculous," I muttered, but it came out weak, unconvincing. "Maybe." His smile softened just barely, but I saw it. "But you still haven't told me to stop." And that was when I realized how dangerous this was becoming. It wasn't that I didn't see Ethan. He was there, too, steady, kind, the type of person you could depend on without hesitation. Sometimes we'd bump into each other in the library or the dining hall, and he always greeted me with that gentle warmth that made my chest ache. If Adrien was fire, unpredictable and consuming, Ethan was water calm, grounding. Part of me longed for that safety, but the problem was, I couldn't stop thinking about the fire. The turning point came at a party. I hadn't planned to go loud music, strangers pressing too close. The haze of alcohol never really appealed to me. But my roommate dragged me along, insisting it was part of the real college experience. So I stood in the corner of some overcrowded frat house, clutching a red plastic cup and wishing I could evaporate. That's when Adrien appeared. "Of course you're here," he said, smirk curling like smoke. "I was just thinking this place was boring." I rolled my eyes. "You're imagining things. I didn't come here for you." "Sure you didn't." He stepped closer, his presence immediately filling the space between us. "But now that you're here, dance with me." My eyes widened. "What? No. Why not?" His grin was wicked, daring. "Scared you'll like it?" The music pounded through the floor, bass rattling my chest. People pressed and swayed around us, the air thick with sweat and laughter, but all I could feel was the magnetic pull of him. "I don't dance," I said firmly, though my voice wavered. "Good thing I do." Before I could protest, his hand slipped around my wrist, warm and sure, tugging me gently but insistently toward the center of the crowd. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I let him. The world blurred into motion lights flashing, bodies moving, the beat thundering like a second heartbeat. Adrien moved with an ease that was infuriatingly attractive, his body fluid, confident. And somehow, impossibly, he pulled me with him. "Relax," he said, close to my ear, his breath sending shivers down my spine. "It's just us. Just us." My movements were awkward, stiff at first, but then something shifted. Maybe it was the music. Maybe it was the way his hand lingered at the small of my back, steadying me. Suddenly, I wasn't thinking about how ridiculous I looked. I was only aware of him, his smile. His eyes locked on mine like there was no one else in the room. For a fleeting moment, it felt like flying. And then, just as quickly, fear crashed back in. I pulled away, breathless, my heart slamming against my ribs. "I can't." Adrien's expression flickered, caught somewhere between confusion and something deeper, something raw. "You can't what?" he asked quietly. I shook my head, backing away, needing space, needing air. "This, whatever this is, it's not a good idea." For the first time, he didn't smirk. He didn't tease. He just looked at me, eyes searching, as if trying to decide whether to let me go or pull me back in. Finally, he stepped aside, his voice barely audible over the music. "If that's what you want." But the ache in his tone told me it wasn't what he wanted. And the twist in my chest told me it wasn't what I wanted either. I spent the rest of the night in turmoil, hiding on the porch while strangers laughed and shouted inside. My head told me to stay away from him, that Adrien was a storm, beautiful but destructive. But my heart was already caught in the lightning. And when I finally made it back to my dorm, exhausted and restless, I knew one thing for certain. This was no longer just a game. It was something far more dangerous, something that could burn me alive. The days after the party were different. Adrien wasn't gone, not entirely. He still passed me in the quad, still offered a grin that lingered in my chest longer than it should. But there was distance now, a hesitance I hadn't seen before. It should have been a relief. It wasn't. The silence between us felt heavier than his teasing ever had. And when Ethan found me in the library, offering a kind smile and a seat across from him, part of me wondered if maybe that was the safer choice. If maybe leaning into his steadiness, his gentle warmth, would protect me from the chaos brewing inside. But every time I tried to imagine it, every time I looked at Ethan's calm, comforting face, I still saw Adrien's eyes in my mind, and I hated myself for it, because the truth I didn't want to admit was already clawing its way to the surface. I didn't just want Adrien to tease me. I wanted him to see me, and I was terrified of what that meant. By the third week of classes, the air between Adrien and me was electric in a way that left me constantly unsettled. He wasn't pushing like before, not with the same relentless teasing, but he wasn't gone either. He existed on the edges of my world, close enough to notice, far enough to miss. And that distance was torture. One evening, I found myself walking back from a late seminar, the campus unusually quiet. The air was cool, leaves crunching underfoot as autumn crept in. I should have been focused on the assignment weighing me down, but my thoughts wandered elsewhere toward a smirk that haunted me, a laugh that echoed even in silence. Walking alone at night? I froze at the familiar voice, spinning to find Adrien leaning against a lamppost, his silhouette framed by the warm glow. He looked casual, hands shoved into his jacket pockets, but there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before, something almost hesitant. "You scared me?" I muttered, pressing a hand to my chest. "Sorry," he said, though the faint curve of his lips suggested otherwise. He fell into step beside me, uninvited as always. "You really shouldn't walk back alone. You never know what kind of people are out here." I arched a brow at him. "And what are you?" "Trouble," he said without missing a beat, grinning sideways at me. The words should have annoyed me, but instead, they sank deep, curling warm in my stomach. Because this time he didn't say it like a joke. He said it like a confession. We walked in silence for a while, the kind of silence that wasn't empty but charged. My heart hammered against my ribs, every step too loud in my ears. Finally, unable to stand it, I blurted, "Why do you keep showing up?" Adrien glanced at me, his grin fading into something more serious. "Because you keep pretending you don't want me to." I stumbled, heat rushing to my face. "That's not, come on," he interrupted, his tone softer now. "You can lie to yourself if you want, but don't lie to me. I see it every time you look at me. You're just scared." The words hit too close, peeling away the flimsy armor I tried to build. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out, because he was right, and that terrified me. When we reached my dorm, I stopped at the steps, needing space, air, something. Adrien lingered at the bottom, hands shoved deeper into his pockets, eyes searching mine. "You don't have to say anything," he said quietly. "But if you ever stop running, you know where to find me." Then he turned and walked away, his figure swallowed by the shadows, leaving me trembling on the steps with the weight of a choice I wasn't ready to make. For days after, his words haunted me. "You're just scared." He wasn't wrong. My fear wasn't just about him, it was about everything. About being seen in a way I'd spent years trying to hide. About what people would think. About what it would mean to let myself want something I couldn't control. But the more I tried to shove it down, the more impossible it became. Every corner of campus held a memory of him, a flash of his grin, the echo of his laughter. And every time Ethan's kind eyes met mine, I felt guilt twist deeper, because he was safe, and yet, he wasn't who I wanted. The breaking point came during a group project. Fate, with its twisted sense of humor, had paired me with both Ethan and Adrien. Sitting in the library between them felt like being caught in the eye of a storm, one side calm, steady, the other alive with restless energy. Ethan organized the notes, quietly efficient, his voice gentle as he explained ideas. Adrien leaned back in his chair, tossing in sharp, witty comments that shouldn't have been helpful but somehow were. And me? I was a mess. At one point, Ethan excused himself to grab more books. The moment he was out of earshot, Adrien leaned closer, his voice low. "You're avoiding me." I stiffened, keeping my eyes on my laptop. "I've been busy." "Busy ignoring me, maybe?" His smirk was back, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You know, you're a terrible liar." I clenched my jaw, typing nonsense just to keep my hands moving. "Not everything is about you." "True." He leaned even closer, his shoulder brushing mine, his breath ghosting against my ear. "But this is." My chest tightened painfully, heat crawling up my neck. "Adrien, please, please what?" His voice was a whisper now, softer than I'd ever heard it. "Please stop? Please don't make you admit what you already feel? Because I can. I'll stop. Just say it." The library noise blurred around us, the world narrowing to the space between his words and my silence. My lips parted, but before I could answer, Ethan returned, books in hand, his calm presence crashing into the tension like cold water. Adrien pulled back instantly, his smirk snapping back into place. But his eyes betrayed something raw, something breaking. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just a game anymore. Not for him. Not for me. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every word, every look, every brush of his hand. The fear that had been anchoring me for so long felt suddenly fragile, like one more push would shatter it completely. But giving in meant risk. It meant change. It meant facing the parts of myself I'd buried under years of pretending. And yet, when I closed my eyes, all I saw was Adrien's face, his expression when he thought I might actually push him away for good. The truth settled heavy and undeniable. I didn't want safe. I wanted him. The next day, I found myself walking to the edge of campus, to the old fountain where I'd seen him hanging out before. My heart pounded, every step heavier than the last. And there he was leaning against the stone, earbuds in, head tilted back as if he owned the world. When he saw me, his brows lifted, surprise flickering across his face before melting into that familiar grin. Well, look who finally stopped running. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I'm not here for your jokes, Adrien. Good, he said, pushing off the fountain, closing the distance between us. Because I'm not in the mood to joke. We stood there, inches apart, the air thick enough to drown in. For once, he didn't smirk, didn't tease. His gaze was steady, intense, and it terrified me how much I wanted to fall into it. Say it, he whispered. Just once. Say you feel it too. My pulse roared in my ears. Could have lied. I could have walked away. But the words spilled out before I could stop them. I do. His breath caught, and for the first time, Adrien looked stunned, like he hadn't expected me to actually say it. Then, slowly, his lips curved not into a smirk, but into something softer, something that made my chest ache. And before I could second-guess myself, his hand found mine. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. But something inside me cracked open, and for the first time, I let it. I don't know how long we stood there, just breathing the same air, our hands tangled like it was the most natural thing in the world. But I knew one thing with startling clarity. This was the beginning of something I couldn't run from anymore. Something that might break me. Something that might save me. The days after our confession felt different, like the world had shifted on its axis. Adrien wasn't just teasing anymore, was present. Real. His jokes softened into warmth. His smirks gave way to genuine smiles. And the moments we shared stretched longer, deeper, until they weren't just accidents of fate but choices we both made. But the world outside us hadn't changed. And that was the problem. Word spread fast in college. Too fast. By the end of October, whispers started swirling in hallways and cafeterias. People saw us walking too close, laughing too much, slipping away from crowded rooms to find each other in quiet corners. Some of the whispers were curious. Some were cruel. And though Adrien brushed them off with his usual bravado, let them talk. They've got nothing better to do. I could feel the weight pressing down, heavy on my chest, because I had always feared this. Being seen, being judged, being reduced to a rumor before I even had the courage to claim the truth out loud. One night, after a particularly brutal day of hearing my name hissed in the dining hall, I snapped. I can't do this, I said, my voice shaking. We were sitting on the steps of the old arts building, the campus quiet under a blanket of stars. Everyone's watching us. Everyone's talking. I didn't sign up for this circus. Adrien froze, his usual easy smile flickering. You're saying you don't want this anymore? The words tangled in my throat. I didn't want to hurt him, but the fear was louder than the truth. Maybe it's better if we stop. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. For once, Adrien didn't have a comeback. He just stared at me, his jaw tight, his eyes dark with something I couldn't read. Finally, he stood, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. If that's what you want. And then he walked away. This time, he didn't look back. The days that followed were unbearable. Adrien still existed on campus, of course louder than life, surrounded by friends, filling every space he entered with that same magnetic energy. But he no longer sought me out. No more teasing, no more secret glances, no more late-night conversations that stretched until dawn. It was as if he'd built a wall overnight. And the worst part was how much it hurt, because I had asked for it. Ethan noticed. He didn't pry, but his quiet concern lingered every time we crossed paths. He'd offer a small smile, an invitation to sit with him, a gentle way of reminding me I wasn't alone. But it wasn't enough, because no matter how kind he was, no matter how safe he felt, he wasn't Adrien. And every night, when I lay awake replaying the moment I'd pushed him away, regret clawed deeper into my chest. The breaking point came during the first snow. It was late November, the campus blanketed in white, laughter and shouts filling the air as students hurled snowballs and built lopsided snowmen. I was trudging back from the library, weighed down with books and misery, when I saw him, Adrien, standing in the middle of the quad, snowflakes dusting his hair, his leather jacket absurd against the winter chill. He was laughing with a group of friends, his smile brighter than the icy sunlight, and for a moment, it was like nothing had changed. But then his eyes met mine, and I saw it, the flicker of hurt, still there, buried under the grin he offered the world. Something inside me cracked. I couldn't do it anymore. Pretend I didn't care. Pretend I wasn't aching every second he wasn't near. Fear had ruled me long enough, and if I kept letting it, I'd lose him for good. So before I could talk myself out of it, I dropped my books in the snow and ran. Adrien! My voice cut through the cold air, startling him. His friends turned, confused, but I only saw him, the way his smile faltered, the way he straightened, guarded. I skidded to a stop in front of him, breathless, heart hammering like a drum. For a second, no words came, just raw panic clawing at my throat. But then I looked into his eyes, those sharp, mischievous, maddening eyes, and everything tumbled out. I was scared, okay? My voice cracked, louder than I intended. I was scared of what people would say, scared of being seen, scared of this off you. But the truth is, Adrien, none of that matters. Because the only thing worse than people talking is not having you. The quad went silent. Even the snow seemed to pause midair. Adrien stared at me, his expression unreadable. And for one agonizing heartbeat, I thought I'd lost him anyway. Then, slowly, his grin returned, not the cocky smirk, not the mask he wore for everyone else, but something softer, real, and devastating. About damn time, he murmured. And then he pulled me into his arms. The world erupted cheers, whistles, laughter from his friends, but it all blurred out, muffled under the pounding of my heart. His jacket was cold against my cheek, his arms strong around me, and for the first time I didn't care who was watching, because this was ours. When he pulled back just enough to look at me, his forehead resting against mine, his voice was a low, shaky whisper. You have no idea how much I wanted to hear you say that. I smiled through the tears stinging my eyes. I think I do. And then, with the snow falling softly around us, he kissed me. It wasn't the dramatic, fiery kind of kiss I'd imagined. It was gentle, tentative, like we were both still learning how to hold something fragile. But it was enough. More than enough. Because it was real. From that day on, things weren't magically perfect. The whispers didn't stop. The stares didn't vanish. But something inside me had changed. The fear was still there, yes, but it no longer controlled me. And Adrien was worth every risk. We spent winter wrapped in stolen moment-shot chocolate in the dining hall, long walks across the frozen campus, laughter spilling into the quiet hours of the night. Ethan, ever the steady presence, accepted it with grace, offering a quiet nod of understanding the first time he saw us together. And though guilt lingered, it was softened by his kindness, by the unshakable bond we still shared. By spring, the snow melted into green, and with it, the sharp edges of fear dulled into something gentler. We weren't just a rumor anymore. We were a truth. And the truth, I learned, was beautiful. Looking back, I still laugh at how it all began with a clumsy mistake. A compliment meant for the wrong twin. But maybe that was the point. Maybe life has a way of leading us exactly where we need to go, even if the path feels ridiculous, terrifying, impossible. Because in the end, it led me to Adrien, to fire and chaos and laughter and love. And though I had stumbled, though I had run, though I had feared, I had also chosen. I had chosen him, and that made all the difference. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.